Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the Durham Human Relations Division, the Durham Human Relations Commission, and the Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 12th Annual Women's Forum. This event is held in March during Women's History Month because this is the month set aside to celebrate women's contributions to history, to culture, and to society. Knowing about women's history provides a very expansive vision of what a woman can do. You may ask, why host a women's forum? These events take place all the time. Why? Why do we need to have one? Our forum is special, and that is because we put the spotlight on women that's within our community, women who work or live within the community, and we get them to share their experiences and tell their stories. So, from the stories, we can gain insights on how they mastered career challenges or their road to success, on their road to success, and also who inspired them along the way. That's very important. I would like to again thank you for coming out and joining us for the 12th Annual Women's Forum. We will now have a welcome and greetings from our Mayor Pro Tem, Cora Cole McFadden.
Good evening. Come on. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so very much. This is Durham, after all, and we're just proud to be here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to bring remarks as we celebrate women during the Women's History Month. Tonight we celebrate 5 phenomenal women whose contributions have touched and continue to touch the lives of so many. Women whose lives serve as positive role modeling for our younger generation. And that is not, I'm not saying that you're not young, but I'm talking about those who are younger than you are. 5 phenomenal women. There is one phenomenal woman missing, and that is the Chancellor of the great mighty Eagles, the MEAC champs. I think they're the 13th or 14th seed playing in the NCAA. Give us another round of applause. And it took this mighty woman eagle to bring that victory to Durham, North Carolina. So let's applaud the Chancellor of North Carolina's Central University in her absence. Deborah is an outstanding person. She has brought so much energy to our university, and incidentally, I just happen to be an Eagle. Now, the women celebrated this evening stand on the shoulders of so many women who have sacrificed in order that they might be where they are today. And so we expect that they will bring along with them some other women, younger women, who will be able to hold the positions in life that they do. So we salute you this evening for your accomplishments and wish God's blessings upon you as you so richly bless this community. And let me thank each of you for carving out time to share in this experience. Who else but us will lift us up as women the way that we should be lifted up? Now let's give them a round of applause and give us ourselves a round of applause for being so great, because without women, the world would just shut down. And that's true. Think about it. Just think about all that you do. Who else could do this? No. I especially want to honor the presence of some young boys, Where are they? The Thomas Mentoring Group. Where did they go? Bring them in so that they can see the beauty of the women here and aspire to have wives that look like us, just like us. And while they're coming, oh, here they are. Let's give them a round of applause. These are wonderful young men. Come up front. Now they can come up front so they can be seen. And Larry, stand up, Larry. Larry Thomas is the leader of this group, and I'm sure he has others working with him. Where's my great nephew, Larry? I thought he was a part of this group too. But hey, what can I say? Look, thank you so much for being here, young men. You can look at me while I'm talking to you. Thank you so very much for being here with us. You are so special. You're good looking. You're intelligent. You come from greatness, so you're destined for greatness. So we expect great things from you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. You may go back to your seat. Thank you. Now we have another group that I must recognize before I take my seat, and those are elected officials. I saw Judge Walker, Commissioner Howden. Are there Councilman Davis? Are there other elected officials? Okay. Thank you for coming. We want to thank the Human Relations Commission and the Human Relations Division for all that they do to make Durham the great place that it is. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you so much for those enlightening words. And before we get into the introductions of the panel, I would like to also recognize we have two of our Human Relations Commissioners here present, and that's Commissioner Norris Wicker, that's sitting right here up front, and also Commissioner Susan Austin. Did I leave anyone out? Is there anyone else that I missed? Okay, thank you so much for coming, and especially because you, too, are one of the sponsors of this great event. So I want to start by saying we have five phenomenal women, 5 women that are going to enlighten you, that are going to enrich your soul and talk about themselves and what they do, and hopefully it will motivate and inspire you, too. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to do that, and what the order of the program will be after each presentation, or after all 5 presentations, then you will have a chance to ask questions of the panel. So if there are questions that you may have, sort of jot them down as you go through, and we will have a question-answer session about 10 minutes after the conclusion of all 5 speakers. Okay, and that will give you a chance to interact, and hopefully there will be some questions that we'll have. So we're going to start first. I want to just introduce, or at least let you know who the panelists are. The first panelist is Anita Daniels, President of Actualities Limited. The second, Leonor Clavijo, Executive Director of the North Carolina Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Next, Kelli O'Hara, investigative reporter for WTBD 11. Dr. Ashleigh Rosette, who is at Duke University, a professor within Duke University School of Business. And last but not least, Regina Youngblood, the newest member of the City of Durham staff. She's the Director of Human Resources. So let's give them a hand. And I will start by giving a brief introduction of each of the panelists, and from that point, they will give you their presentation. Our first panelist, Anita Daniels, is a North Carolina native and a licensed social worker. The positions Anita has held the past 27 years allowed her to work with different segments of the community: business, education, religious, nonprofit organizations, government, elected officials, and with the people who access community resources. She is director of the Durham Center Access, operated by Freedom House Recovery Center. Anita's passion for helping people is rooted in her upbringing. Anita's mother refused to accept support from DSS. Her grandfather taught her to honor her agreements. If you know better, you ought to do better, he told Anita and her cousins often. If she could discover what someone needed, point them in the right direction. And so she's done what her life experiences in the Daniels family taught her. So without further ado, please welcome and join me in welcoming Ms. Anita Daniels.
Good evening, and thank you all for your presence tonight. I am Anita Daniels, a guidance counselor here in Durham. Yes, I am a North Carolina licensed therapist, but my true calling is guidance and wise counsel. I was raised by a single mother and my grandparents. I'm the only girl and the oldest of 5 children. My mother had my brother and me, and my father had 3 sons. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher who pastored 3 rural churches and worked as a service station attendant. My grandmother worked at the cafeteria for one of the schools for many years before becoming a full-time domestic. My mother also worked as a domestic for the early years of my life before she became a state employee. I was too young to remember, but my aunts and uncles told me we lived in public housing when I was born. A certain number of family members could reside in the house, so when my mother got pregnant with my brother, we would exceed the number of people who could live in the house. She moved to New York to live with one of my aunts, and I remained with my grandparents. I was 3 when my grandfather moved us to our family home. I suspect he wanted his family to be together in the same house. My mother returned with my brother, and we were reunited. My grandfather paid $79 a month for 15 years until the mortgage was paid off. I have the original deed in my fireproof safe. Some of you are too young to remember the term government cheese, but it made amazing grilled cheese sandwiches and macaroni and cheese. Public housing, government cheese, and Head Start were the extent of my family's involvement with welfare, as it was called back then. My family qualified for more assistance, but the word welfare didn't sit well with any of them. I was prepared to say we were poor, but when you're a preacher's kid, you are taught God will supply all your needs, and honestly, that's how I felt. We went to church almost every Sunday. I am not exaggerating. I don't think my 2 cousins, my brother and I, knew we were poor. We were never hungry, homeless, without electricity or water. We never had bill collectors calling our home or showing up asking for late payments. My life wasn't filled with a lot of material things, but it was rich with the things that mattered most: love, security, morals, values, and faith in God. My grandfather's motto was, if you know better, you ought to do better. I was the first college graduate in my family. It was a long and often rocky road to my bachelor's degree. I was a cheerleader in the 9th through 11th grades, but my grade point average was 1 point too low to make the squad my senior year. I barely graduated with my class, and no one talked to me about college. My grandfather had a strong work ethic, and we were taught to get a job. I tried to find a job for a year, but no one would hire me, so I babysat and kept stats and score for the girls and boys varsity teams at my high school. After one of the games, a VR counselor came to the scorer's table and asked, "Why aren't you in college?" I replied, "Because I can't afford to go." He asked, "If I can help you find some money, will you go?" I said, "Yes." His name was Richard Christian. My grandfather's other motto, "Your word is your bond." Mr. Christian kept his word, and I was obligated to keep mine. He helped me complete college and financial aid applications. I was accepted to Fayetteville State University at age 19. I made the cheerleading squad, too. When my academic counselor asked what I wanted to major in, I said, "I want to be a guidance counselor." She responded, "We don't have a guidance program, so you'll have to transfer." After 1 semester, I went back to Goldsboro. It felt like Mr. Christian met me at the county line saying, enroll in Wayne Community College until you figure out where you want to go next. I attended community college for a year and then decided to follow 2 of the female basketball players to ECU. I transferred to ECU in January of 1981. I turned 21 the following month, but technically I wasn't a sophomore yet. VR paid my tuition, fees, and books, financial aid, and I paid everything else. I didn't work my first semester, but from the fall of 1981 until I graduated, I worked as a resident advisor, cashier, caterer in the cafeteria, tutor for athletes, and an orientation counselor for incoming freshmen and transfer students while I attended school full-time. I became head resident my senior year. Yes, I was exhausted and depressed. My academic advisor at ECU asked that same question. My response was the same. I want to be a guidance counselor. She said, you have to major in sociology, social work, or psychology. I didn't know which to choose, but I chose social work. Thank goodness. I was the youngest of the orientation counselors I worked with for the 2 consecutive summers. They were seniors, and I listened as they set goals for attending graduate school. So I set a goal for graduate school too, to have my master's by the time I was 30. I graduated from ECU with a bachelor's degree in social work in December of 1984. 7 days after graduation, I was offered a job as a social worker at the Caswell Center in Kinston. My goal was to be a social worker in a prison. 12 months later, I was offered a job as a social worker at Women's Prison in Raleigh. When I turned 28, I knew I had to get to work to meet my goal of having my master's at 30. I applied to one school, UNC Chapel Hill. When the dean, the late Dr. John Turner, interviewed me, he asked me, what other schools did you apply to? I said, none. He said, what will you do if we don't accept you? And I said, I will keep applying until you do. So he accepted me, and a year later, I had my master's degree in social work. The rest really is history. I have had an amazing career as a social worker. The master's degree in social work has taken me places I never dreamed I'd go. My refrigerator is covered with magnets from all the cities I've visited from the positions I've held. I've been director of more positions than I can count, and all of them have shaped who I am as a woman, a professional, and a person. I worked alongside executives of IBM, GlaxoSmithKline, Burroughs Wellcome, BB&T, Duke Power, CP&L, Nations Bank, CCB, First Citizens, Northern Telecom, Blue Cross, WCHL, Mama Dips, Wake Med, elected leaders, city, county, and town managers, college and university presidents and chancellors, school superintendents, as Assistant Vice President of United Way of Wake County and Vice President of the Triangle United Way. I travel with business and community leaders to different cities to learn strategies for addressing town and gown issues as Executive Director of the United Way of Orange County. I was hired to be director of the Durham Youth Coordinating Board in 1998, and the board was Durham's elected and appointed officials whose charge was to coordinate the efforts of entities serving youth and their families. A master's degree in social work has helped me focus on people and the systems that affect them. I was trained to advise the people and the systems, and that's what I've been doing since 1989. I have obtained 2 licenses and 3 certifications, and I started my practice, Actualities Limited, in February of 2002. So in the true form of giving wise counsel and advice, I have a few suggestions for you in the audience and those viewing from home. Number 1, don't do anything to harm yourself to prove something to anyone. In other words, be a law-abiding citizen. Wear your seatbelt. Don't text and drive. Last time I checked, the legal drinking age in North Carolina is still 21. Obey it and don't drive while impaired. Marijuana is illegal in North Carolina. I don't care who tries to convince you otherwise. A record is a tough thing to get around when you're trying to get accepted into college, get a job, credit, a license, or certification. particularly in the counseling field. Number 2, focus on the experience you will gain, not the job title, and sometimes not the salary. Earlier this week, while reading my devotional, I learned a new job title, underwater ceramic technician. In layman's terms, a dishwasher at a restaurant. I worked for the city of Durham 6 years, the first 3 as director of Lyon Park, and later as operations and evaluation administrator in the solid waste department. I served as assistant to the director and learned about enterprise funds, how to write requests for proposals, contracts, and contract amendments. I helped prepare and present our departmental capital improvement projects, our annual budget, and other proposals to the city council. If I cared about my title, I would have remained at Lyon Park, but missed out on another rich professional experience. My mother used to say, don't spend all your money in one place. Mr. Christian responded to one of my many thank you cards I've sent him over the years with this PS, save your money. Maybe it was my upbringing that helped me know I didn't need the latest gadgets, name brands, a fancy car, or to keep up with the Joneses, especially since I've never been formally introduced to them. I often say I have a teenager. My car friend is 18 years old. It is 50 miles shy of 314,000 miles. Of course I could buy another car, but I won't until I need one. Save some of your money so you won't spend your entire career paying off debt. You should get to do some of the things you really want to do when you turn 60 or even younger if you choose. Don't compare yourself to others. One of my professors told me that. The last is take care of your mind, body, and spirit. Exercise, take vitamins, get enough rest, and avoid unnecessary drama and chaos. I want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank our Mayor Pro Tem, Cole McFadden, and thank you for allowing me to be part of the Women's History Month Forum. And ironically, it's also National Professional Social Work Month. I am humbled and grateful.
Thank you, Anita. Our next presenter is Leonor Clavijo. I first heard Leonor when she gave a presentation at the celebration that we did in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. And she did such an excellent job talking about her background and where she came from and on and on. So we asked her to join us for this celebration so you can hear about her background. Briefly, Leonor Clavijo is the executive director of the North Carolina Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And as the director, she advocates for Hispanic businesses in the state and helps them assimilate to the business community at large through education and integration activities. Leonor holds a BA in journalism and communication and marketing from La Universidad de Autónoma in Colombia, South America. And she holds a master's degree in arts from Duke University. So please join me in welcoming Leonor Clavijo.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for the invitation. And I have to say that I'm very excited to be sitting here because it feels very powerful to be sitting here and not be back there when we've been many times asking for issues and for opportunities for the Latino community. So I'm very excited about that I totally forgot everything I was going to say. Yeah, and I came by myself, so I don't have anybody taking pictures, so it make it worse and more distraction for me thinking about how I'm gonna be talking later about being sitting here. Every time I get an invitation to talk about myself or the things that I do, I ask to myself the same question. What is something and what I have to say that is gonna make people to sit and listen to me? Because I love talking. And actually having people invited to come and listen what I have to say always make me ask the same question, what I have to say. And what I have to say today, and the response always is the same, is that I'm at the face of many women like me. And for many years in my life as an immigrant, I've been the voice for immigrant Latino women. But now that we are celebrating women and the history of women, I realized that my story is the same that many women, because I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, and that made me the same that other women. So the response is what I'm here today is to tell about myself, who I am, and my life. I came to the United States in 2010 to be an international student. 2010 is when I came here to North Carolina, but in 2001, I came to the United States. I was 21 at the time, and I came here. It wasn't my choice. It was my parents who decided to send me to the United States to learn English. Therefore, I still having an accent. I'm still learning English every day. And I always made this joke that this is why I'm still in here, because I'm still learning English. Many opportunities came with that. My parents decided to send me to the United States because the political situation in my home country, Colombia and South America, was very difficult, so they decided to pay for international tuition instead of paying for the rescue. My brother was kidnapped, and he is free now, because I always get that question, what happened with my brother? He's safe and very successful. He also lives in the United States. I was here as an international student, and then I have also the opportunity to work as a news reporter for the largest Spanish TV station. For many years, I was a news reporter for Univision in California. And that also gave me the blessing, I like to say blessing, to work with my community and to every day learn about the issues that the Latino community was facing. I was in California, where it's very different from here in the South. The Latino population is the largest population in the state. But it was a great experience for me. And also, it was a motivation to really work more serving the community and offer opportunities for the community, the Latino community. I also had, in that time, we decided with my fiance at the time to move here to North Carolina. So it's very symbolic to be here in North Carolina, because this is the state where I decided to get married and starting a family. My 2 children are made in Durham, and they were born in Cary. And we still having a house in Durham right now. I live in Raleigh. But Durham is a very important part of my life, and we have a lot of appreciation. I say we, my family, because not only because my kids are born in North Carolina and in the area, but because Durham is a very important city for the Latino community. The Latino community is the largest minority group growing in North Carolina, and Durham is a very good place for our community, for the opportunities, and therefore I have a lot of appreciation for Durham. I also went to Duke. My desire, it was to go to a public school, and I tried, and I did my best to go UNC, but the opportunity came with Duke because they offered me the scholarship. So that's why I went. And those are one of the advantages to be minorities sometimes. So I was the Latina face, and it was a great experience for me to be part of Duke. Though I still believe it's very important to support public education and public schools and more opportunities for more Latinas like me to continue education. Going back to my story, as an immigrant, the path to continue my career back as a journalism, it was very difficult because when I came to North Carolina, there was no TV station, there was no newscast like I was used to work in California. That's how I ended working at the Hispanic Center here in Durham, El Centro Hispano. And it was an amazing experience for me working in communications, but serving my own community, providing resources. For those who don't know, El Centro is a largest organization providing services to the Latino, and not only Latino, but also immigrant community, offering different programs. So I had that experience to work in there, and from there I went to work at the Chamber of Commerce, also because my experience, it was dealing with the Chamber in California. So I represent right now over 200 Latino business owners in the area of Raleigh, Durham, and also Chapel Hill. And in the state, we right now have over 4,000 Latino business owners. And it's an honor to represent these business owners because it shows the importance and the value that the Latino community is giving to our state. Many of these business owners are women. Women not only with the Latino community, but with the entire nation are opening business faster than any other group. We have that desire that deserves a big applause. So it's very rewarding every day to meet business owners and Latinas who are making that dream true of having a businesses. So it's very rewarding having that opportunity to continue working with my community, with the Latino community, and offering opportunities. Our chamber is in the chamber business of doing networking and events, but also working on education and offering opportunities to immigrants who are looking to start a business and to make their business grow. It's important also to say that sometimes many immigrants who come here are like myself, who are educated, who had the opportunity to go to school, who had to also have a college degree, but the barrier of the language makes things more difficult. So our organization brings that opportunity to serve as a bridge between Latinos and non-Latinos. Again, talking with my story, I also like to say that I have the opportunity to speak because I represent many women who come here as a professionals and are looking for that opportunity to continue working in their careers. But when we come here as an immigrant, sometimes we don't have that opportunity to continue working in our field and make things more difficult. I feel that I've been blessed with that and I've been able to continue. I'm not a news reporter, but it was my choice. But I'm working on serving and giving more opportunities to other women and to other immigrants and Latinos like myself. And I have 2 minutes more, so. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you, Leonor. Moving on, our next presenter is Kelli O'Hara. From the coast of Carolina to the heart of central Virginia and then to the mountains of Utah, this reporter has been all over the country telling stories that need to be told. Kelli O'Hara is an investigative reporter with WTBD 11's I-Team, and she spends her day uncovering the stories that viewers need and want to know about. She is a member of IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors, and the recipient of several Associated Press awards. She earned a master's degree from Boston University and a bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke College. Without further ado, please let's welcome Ms. Kelli O'Hara.
Thank you. I didn't know if we could do the video by any chance as well. Okay. My name's Kelli O'Hara. I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and you're asking what is she doing down here? And I like the South. I like the people and the food, and of course the warm weather. My dad never went to college. My dad ran his own business, and my mom was a school teacher and a social worker. So I never knew anyone in the media. We never knew doctors. We never knew lawyers. We never knew anyone other than school teachers. So I guess I take that because every day I hear the word no. In my job, I hear the word no. I hear the word no, where you can't be a reporter, you can't go back to graduate school, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I guess I tell you, and I was telling my fiance last night, every time I hear the word no, I get excited because at least you gave me an answer and then we can start negotiating. And generally when someone tells me the word no, I challenge myself to always turn that no into a yes. I want to tell you some experiences that come to mind, the ones I can remember, but generally the way I go and my motto in life is don't ever tell me no, because you're going to get into a long conversation. You're just going to be unrelenting after a while, and you're going to say yes. And don't ever judge anyone. You don't know anyone's experiences. You don't know mine. I don't know yours. And every single day I am told a lot of stories, and I go into people's homes when they're at their worst, and I'm consistently humbled. One thing I always hear from people is the news always says the worst. You know, I turn on the news and I hear bad things, and I'll tell you, I turn on the news and I only hear good things, because I go out every single day and I only see the good in society and humanity and in all of us. I'm hoping that with your own lives, just with my 10-minute speech here, that when you hear the word no next time, you're going to go around that and you're going to work above that and you're going to go around that. Because in my experiences, we determine our own fates. You know, no one else here is driving the ship but me. I have someone who's an amazing co-pilot who just proposed, by the way. And, thank you. But we determine our own course. And we only have the power to turn those no's into yeses day in and day out. I got rejected from my dream college. So what did I do? I stayed up every single night till 3 a.m. studying so I could get my GPA to a 3.5, and I transferred. And what people don't tell you is it's really hard to get in the front door of anything, but I always go in through the back. And it's easier to transfer, believe it or not, than get into to a school. After college, I lived overseas. I backpacked through Europe and Israel by myself because I didn't have the opportunity to see the world. I didn't grow up in a family where we were able to do that. I taught English overseas, and then I came back and I taught history, and I taught kids that no one else wanted to teach. They were children that were expelled from the expelled schools. And there I learned a lot about humanity and you know, what society does with people that I guess don't fit into our mold. And that made me want to tell stories, and that made me want to help out and tell a difference. I didn't have the grade, I didn't have the not the GPA, but the test scores to get into graduate school. So what did I do? I applied to only one program, and I was determined to only get into that one program. So I met with the head of that program, and then I met with him again and again and again, and I sent him a Thanksgiving Day card. I sent him a Merry Christmas card, a Valentine's Day card, a St. Patrick's Day card, and a New Year's card, and finally he let me in. I graduated from school. I was 25 or 26, and I had my master's degree from a big fancy university, but suddenly it's, what do you do with that? I looked at it as I had 1 year to accomplish exactly what I wanted to accomplish in graduate school. I didn't have the money or the ability to do anything. You know, after that I needed to get a job and I needed to be employed. So during graduate school, I worked every night from 1 o'clock to 7 a.m. I worked writing for a local newscast because I couldn't afford to get an internship. So I took the jobs no one else was willing to take. And then I had an internship that turned into a job from someone's maternity leave, and I worked from 7:30 in the morning till 12:30 booking a radio show, meaning I made phone calls, answered the call during the show, and then I went to graduate school in the afternoons, and I slept in my car a lot of times, and I found ways to sleep, but I made it work. And so I took my 3-semester course and I turned it into 2. After that, I needed to get a job, so I got in my car and drove all up and down the East Coast. I was told no by a lot of people. I was told by one man who was a news director, never ever allow a camera to go below your hips because your hips and thighs are big. I was told by one woman, it looks like you're not wearing any makeup, and she's like, you need longer eyelashes. And then I was hit on by another man, and I didn't take that job. I eventually got a job. I ended up in Wilmington, North Carolina, which developed my love of the coast and the love also of North Carolina and the weather and the food and the people. And I was told no there a lot. I was my own photographer. I would sweat a lot of days, lugging my own camera. And I remember someone said to me, you're never going to get ahead just being a regular reporter. You need to dig and you need to ask questions. And since then, I've been doing that. I've been to Richmond, Virginia, where there I did 11 stories on a county pound and exposed corruption and exposed pretty inhumane conditions. I went out to Salt Lake City and I worked out there. And I ended up doing a story for a long period of time on a woman who was accused of doing horrendous things, murdering and torturing her child with her husband. He's since been convicted. She still awaits trial, and if convicted, she will be the first woman sentenced to death, if she is sentenced to death. And I remember everyone in Utah wanted this story. It was the big story, and I worked for the number 4 station, and we didn't have a lot of people watching us. So what I did is I wrote to her. Every week, I wrote a letter to her again and again and again. And finally, she wrote me back. And then I wrote to her again and again and again. And then she started calling me and confessing certain elements of the crime. And then it was a huge exclusive, and it resulted in the highest ratings for that station ever. I ended up here in Raleigh, and since I've been here in Raleigh, I've met a lot of amazing people. Right now, I'm reporting every day for the last month on a horrendous capital case in Johnston County, and I'm going to spare you the details, but I think it takes compassion. I think it takes work to be able to tell stories and make people listen and make them care. I'm going to tell you that my job isn't easy. It's not easy at all the last month, but I feel that my job is to give information in the most compassionate and appropriate way and make you listen and make you care. And if anything in your own lives, please always be nice to news reporters. We're not all bad people. And never take no for an answer. And when someone tells you no, look at that as a yes and start looking at that as a point of negotiation, because you determine your own fate and you can make whatever you want to happen. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Kelli. Moving right along, our next presenter is Dr. Ashleigh Rosette. Dr. Ashleigh Shelby Rosette is a tenured associate professor of management and organizations and a Center of Leadership and Ethics scholar at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. She is also a fellow at the Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Gender in the Social Sciences, and a member of the Duke Corporate Education Global Learning Resource Network. Dr. Rosette studies diversity and negotiations in organizational settings. In her primary area of research, she explores social and contextual factors that influence diversity-related perceptions. Dr. Rosette has conducted and presented her research in the United States, France, Spain, Portugal, Hong Kong, South Africa, the Netherlands, Austria, and Canada. So at this time, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ashleigh Rosette.
Hi, everyone. First and foremost, thank you so much to Ms. Donaldson and to the Human Relations Division for this invitation to sit amongst such esteemed women that I'm just amazed at hearing their stories, and also to engage in a fruitful discussion that I hope will take place afterwards. When I spoke with Ms. Donaldson a few days ago, and I asked her what should we kind of tackle, as a member of this panel, she said that basically do two things. I would like for you to talk about your what led to your work, and I'd like for you to talk about what led to some level of success. Now, Ms. Donaldson may not realize this, but my primary function, the number one thing that I do is I'm a researcher. And that means that we can spend 3 to 4 hours trying to define one single word. So to put all of that within 10 minutes seemed like somewhat of a daunting task. But when I really sat back and thought about it, I think that it can become very simple very easily. And that is when you ask what led to my work, I think what led to my work is what led to many of the people's work up here, and it can be simplified by simply describing it as circumstances and relationships. And when you ask me about what led to my success, I think that I have had the privilege to have a changing and an evolving definition of success over my lifetime. So talking about circumstances, number one. So as I mentioned, and as she mentioned, I'm a professor at Duke, and I have an amazing job, just so you know. I absolutely love my job. And they have 3 primary functions as a professor. Number 1, I'm a researcher, so I'm a scholar. Number 2, I'm a teacher. And number 3, I commit to a certain level of service. Service to the organization, to the university, and to the academic community at large. But the number one thing that I identify as a researcher. And I specifically am a diversity researcher. I'm a diversity scholar. I study race and gender within organizational settings. So specifically, I study how race and gender influence the way in which we perceive our leaders. I study how race and gender influences the trajectory of one's career. I study how race and gender influences perceptions of inequity, people's experiences with inequality, and also people's experiences and understanding of workplace discrimination. So I am a diversity scholar. That's what I do. That's how I define myself. Now, circumstances. I grew up in a very small town in East Texas. And 20 years ago, I could say the name of this town, and nobody would know the name of this town. But roughly about 17 years ago, something happened in this town, and it became infamous, if you will. And why did it become infamous? It became infamous because of a race-related incident that got national and international coverage. And what happened in this town, I think, kind of magnified the experiences of rural America and things that happen and the perceptions that differences still hold in these particular areas and places of the world. Now, when you grow up in an environment that is so, that emphasizes race and class and gender to such an extent, you can't help but wonder about the underpinnings of these occurrences. And so when you ask what led to what I study and why I study it, my circumstances. It's impacted by where I grew up. Not only that, but I was concerned and interested in race and gender as I matriculated through college and also as I went through my work experience. And so circumstances dictated what it is I study and why I do the work that I do. Relationships. Just as we've heard from these women, the relationships that we have in our life basically help to determine who we are. First relationship, as was identified amongst all the women, I think, the parents. So I was raised in rural East Texas, population about 6,000. And as most of the time, that occurs frequently in rural places, you're raised by grandparents. Everybody has a big mama, a big sis, something like that, right? And so I was raised and adopted by grandparents. Grandparents that did not have their own high school education, but knew the importance of getting an education. And actually, they called it getting my lesson. So my mom would come home every day. Ashley, you got your lesson? Yes, ma'am, I got my lesson. So they were always supporting me and encouraging me, and they emphasized the importance of education. The second relationship, a college professor. I attended the University of Texas at Austin, and I majored in accounting. And at the conclusion of one of my classes, I'd given this presentation. I'd convinced my team to do, again, remember, I'm always thinking about race and gender. And it was an auditing class, and we could do it on any topic at all. And I convinced my team that we should do it on the underrepresentation of African Americans in CPA firms. It had nothing to do with the Financial Accounting Standard Board, nothing to do with general accepted accounting principles, or any of the other topics that everybody else was talking about, but I convinced them because I wanted them to see what I was experiencing. Because when I asked my teammates, hey, just out of curiosity, what do you think is the representation of African Americans in CPA firms? And they said, oh, it must be about 20, 25%. That's because they saw me, and I was their study buddy. But actually, at the time, it was less than 2%. So I made this presentation in my class to this professor. This professor had another relationship with someone else, and he said, you know, there's this guy. He's at KPMG, and he's starting this new thing. We don't know whether it's going to happen with it, but he may be interested in this stuff that you're talking about. This guy, so the professor's name was Bill Kinney. This guy was Bernie Milano, who happened to be the secretary of the KPMG Foundation, and they were starting something called the PhD Project. Not sure if you guys have heard about the PhD Project, but the sole purpose of the PhD Project is to educate underrepresented minorities about what it means to get a PhD. I had already, as far as I was concerned, I was good. You know, I was getting my job, all was well, but, you know, nonetheless, it was a free trip to Chicago, so why not? But that relationship completely changed the trajectory because I had no idea what a PhD in business was until I went to this, and this was the first year of the PhD project, by the way, and learned because I didn't have that exposure. And so that relationship gave me knowledge that I simply didn't have. The third or fourth relationship, which one am I on? The fourth one, is my relationship with my advisor when I was studying for my PhD. When I wanted to go in a completely different direction, and she supported me. The final relationship, and probably the most important, was the relationship with my husband, who gave me unconditional support as I tried to matriculate through this journey of becoming a PhD and ultimately a professor. Now, I'm going to go back and fill in a few gaps. I don't know if you realize it, but I left a few gaps out. So let me fill in a few gaps as I respond to the second question, which is what led to your success? And I responded to that, namely, a changing definition of success. So if we go back to my parents and what their definition of success was, their definition of success was to get a good job, okay? For them, a good job meant an office job with benefits. Why? My mother worked as a maid and as a cafeteria worker. My father worked in the mill, and this was manual labor. These were jobs that required a lot of strength, okay? And for them, not for me, these were not good jobs. So they wanted for me a good job, and that was their definition of success. And believe it or not, I go to the University of Texas at Austin, and I graduate with my accounting degree. I started working for Arthur Andersen. I become a CPA, and guess what? I had a good job. I was successful. But that was their definition of success, not necessarily my definition of success. And the idea amongst my family that I was going to quit this good job and go and get a PhD didn't really compute very well. You can imagine what that conversation was like amongst family members. But nonetheless, there was an evolution in terms of what the success meant, and that was going to be, and that was changing for me. And for basically 25 years of my life, it was the idea of getting this good job. So nonetheless, I decided that I'm going to get a PhD. Remember, the relationship that I had put that foundation in terms of that idea of getting a PhD in terms of learning, because I had to learn what it was from somewhere. So now my definition of success became getting a PhD, right? Now, I was an accounting major, so it should have been accounting, but I was not going to get a PhD in accounting. I enjoyed accounting theory, but the thought of doing that for 5 years just did not sound like fun. So I went against the grain, and I got a PhD in organizational behavior. I went to Kellogg, Northwestern University, and Northwestern is known as a negotiation school. And my advisors were gurus in negotiations. And for 3.5 years, I was a negotiation scholar. And then I committed what some people actually say was probably professional suicide. And that is, after having about 3.5 years, spending 3.5 years becoming an expert in negotiations, I decided that I was not going to be defined by negotiations as much as I enjoyed it. What was my passion? What was that I really, really cared about? And it always came back to diversity. So, for one, I could commit professional suicide by completely changing this topic in the 11th hour, and my advisor was like, what in the world? And then I committed professional suicide because I was going to study diversity. And let's just put the pink elephant in the room. I'm a black woman studying diversity. How cliche is that, right? I mean, shouldn't I do something else? But this is what I had passion for. So professional suicide too, so by this time, I should be dead in the water, right? But nonetheless, my relationship with my advisor allowed me to pursue this. And as a result, I then became a professor who studies diversity, a tenured professor, by the way, that just happened last year at Fuqua. And so my definition of success has changed. And along the way, I had a husband who had a comparable definition of success, and that was to provide unconditional support for us as a unit, and that helped quite a bit. Just yesterday, I sat in a symposium. And there was a fantastic researcher, her name is Amy Wisniewski, and she does research on the meaning of work. And she describes work as 3 things. She says work for you can be a job. A job is simply an exchange relationship. I provide a service, you give me an extrinsic reward, or you give me money, and we just go back and forth like this. Work can also be described as a career, meaning that I do the work, but as I do the work, I'm rewarded at a higher level, and it goes up and up along a hierarchy. Or you can describe your work as a calling. And a calling, or the definition of calling, means that it encompasses making the world a better place, if you will. Now, I don't necessarily like the idea of calling or the description of calling. It sounds like it has a religious connotation, and it can be confused in that manner, and that's not what I mean. But I define the work that I do and the place that I've attained as successful, not because of any goals that I've attained, but I'm successful because I am truly enjoying what I do. I've had fantastic relationships, and sometimes circumstances can be the best motivators ever. Thank you so much.
Should be a motivational speaker.
Thank you, Ashleigh. Moving on, last but not least, our very own City Director of Human Resources, Regina Youngblood. Regina joined the City of Durham staff in January of this year. And Regina received her Master's of Art degree in Economics from the University of Texas at Arlington and her Bachelor of Science in Economics from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Regina Youngblood has also received the Professional Human Resource Certification from Human Resources International and was also certified in Project Management from the University of Texas, Arlington. Please join me in welcoming our last speaker, Regina Youngblood.
Good evening. It is an honor to be here before you this evening, and I want to thank Ms. Donaldson and the members of the Human Relations team for putting such a wonderful annual event together and inviting me to take part. I am doubly honored after hearing all of the amazing stories shared tonight, and I want to thank you guys in the audience for staying with me since I'm last. So I'm going to tell you the story of my professional career. Without providing a lot of setup, there has been one constant and common theme that's woven itself through my journey. I'm not going to tell you what that is right now. I want you to actually listen to what I'm saying, and I want to see if you're going to be able to figure it out by the time my story is done. I graduated in 1993 from Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville with my bachelor's degree in economics. Now, Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville is down near St. Louis, Missouri, if anybody knows where that is. So besides being a dedicated scholar, I was a totally engaged and involved student. I was vice president of my sorority chapter, Epsilon Iota chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I was the vice president of Greek Council, and I was student body president. Given all of these things, I was able to establish myself as a leader in the eyes of the Dean of Students, who at that time was Constance Rockingham. And she offered me my first professional job almost as soon as I walked across the stage with my degree. She made me the youngest manager of a university office. I was named the program administrator of the Information and ID Card Center. Now, I was happy to take this good job because I'd been raised in a similar fashion as the previous speaker. My parents worked at the post office. They actually met each other at the post office as mail handlers. And they instilled in me that desire to get a degree and get a good job. So I didn't necessarily have a plan other than I was going to get a degree, but I didn't know where I was going to get this good job. But it presented itself to me in an opportunity from Dr. Rockingham, and so I accepted the job, even though it wasn't in my field, but it was an opportunity to get some valuable work experience. And I did that for 2 years, and I was happy. I gained some good experience, but I did want to work in my field, and I had a vision for what I wanted my work to be. And it involved the economics degree that I had just obtained. So I had an obstacle in front of me, however. I didn't have any relevant work experience. I had some work experience, but I didn't have relevant work experience. And then also to work in economics, most people will tell you you need more than just a master's degree. You might even need a PhD to work specifically in economics. So how was I going to overcome that obstacle? I needed to weigh my options. Was I going to go back to school to pursue a master's degree? Was I going to go back to school to pursue a PhD? Or was I going to move on to a new location where I might have better opportunities to work in my field that were outside of Illinois and outside of St. Louis? So I was weighing my options and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I'm investigating master's degree programs and I'm investigating PhD programs, and I'm also looking for a new place to relocate. And so I started looking towards the south because I like warm weather. I'm from Chicago, and people always say, well, you should be used to the cold. Well, I am, but I don't like it. So I started looking for warmer climates, but I was also looking for warmer climates that had a good job market that would offer me some opportunities in my field. And so I started thinking about Houston, Texas. But at the same time, I didn't want to just put all my eggs in one basket. I was also looking into a master's program at the University of Springfield, University of Illinois Springfield campus. And so I decided to apply for the master's degree program in economics, but I was also pursuing other job opportunities. I was just going to see which thing came up first. I was accepted to the program in the University of Illinois Springfield campus, but I didn't have any way to pay for the program. So I started looking at my opportunities to find money for this master's degree. And I found out that they had a very strong internship program. And that internship program would not only provide me with some lodging assistance and tuition assistance, but it would also provide me with work in my field. So I applied for the internship program to see if that was going to be the way that I would be able to pay for the program and support myself as well as work in my field. So I got an interview with the Bureau of Management and Budget for the state of Illinois, and they had an internship. And I went to the interview, and I thought I did pretty well, and I had some hopes that I'd be offered the internship. And I was surprised when I got the call, and they didn't offer me the internship. They decided to create a full-time job for me and asked me to be a professional member of the team. So I had a decision to make. Am I going to accept this job? It is in my field, but it would mean a sacrifice. I wouldn't be able to pursue the master's degree full-time as I'd planned. Well, I decided to take the job. And it was a good decision. You know, I enjoyed the work that I was doing. It was in my field. I enjoyed where I was. I was acquiring some really great relevant work experience. But after a while, however, it became clear to me that I was never going to be able to pursue my master's degree because of the demands of the job. So that was a serious concern for me because I still had this vision for my path. And I didn't know if this was going to be the right fit for me long term. Something else was happening as well. My decision to remain in Illinois had created some family drama. So you remember how I was telling you that I was thinking about my opportunities and that I might, move to Houston to pursue a warmer climate and a wonderful job market there, where I'd shared that information with my mother that, I've got this internship thing that I'm going to pursue, but I also could maybe move to Texas. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So I'd shared this with her right before I went on this interview for the internship. Well, within a week's time, my parents sold their house and made plans to move to Texas. So I conveniently left that out of the story when I told you I decided to take the job in Springfield. My parents moved to Texas. So while I'm in Springfield getting all this valuable work experience and pursuing my career, my mother is calling me every day saying, I sold my house. You have to come to Texas. And so I moved to Texas. After a year, to quell the drama, I empathized with my mother and understood where she was coming from. And I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to pursue my master's degree if I stayed with the Bureau of Management and Budget. So I was confident in my ability to find a new job in Dallas, Texas that would give me the freedom to pursue my master's degree as well as allow me to work in my field. So the first job I get in Texas was with Fort Worth Transportation Authority. I was a budget analyst there working in my field. It was a great company culture, and an awesome opportunity to apply all the things that I'd learned while I was working for the state of Illinois. I used my attention to detail, and I grew in my competence, and I built some great connections with friends that are still intact today. And I worked there for 2 years, and then I came against my next obstacle. There was no career growth possible within the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. The person that hired me, the CFO, he left, and a new CFO was named, and she was promoted from within, which showed some encouragement that they did promote from within, but she was new in that role, and she didn't have any plans to go anywhere. And so I knew that there was no room for me to grow in the financial area within that company. So I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay? It's a great company, it's great benefits, great money, I'm working in my field, or am I going to pursue my vision to have professional growth? So I started looking for a new job. And I got a job with the Dallas Independent School District where I ended up staying for 10 years, but I never had the same job for more than a year and a half. I was promoted every year and a half. And I had a lot of obstacles that I had to overcome when I was there. But I worked hard, I had a positive attitude, and I had respect of others, and I had respect for others, and I was rewarded for my hard work. I moved through the budget department into operations, into process improvement, into professional development, and then into human resources. I went with the flow, and I was able to read the changing landscape, and I reinvented myself when it was necessary so that I could remain successful. My time at Dallas Independent School District helped me to refine my vision for my career path. I realized that I was building a well-rounded business operations profile, and that was going to lead me to something like a COO someday, or maybe even a city manager. So I was excited about all of the career growth and opportunity that I had while I was at Dallas ISD. And I was finally able to pursue and obtain my master's degree in economics from the University of Texas at Arlington. I had a lot of professional successes while I was in Texas and working for the Dallas Independent School District, but I also suffered a lot of personal tragedies. In 2000, my mom passed away. And then in 2007, my father passed away. I really had to dig deep and draw on my faith and show resilience to get through. But that resilience led me to my next role. I decided to leave Texas behind, and I moved to Washington, D.C. And I took over as the Human Resources Director for D.C. Public Schools. It fit with the plan. But I did have some obstacles that I had to overcome there. There were major changes on the landscape, from budget to leadership to changes in the mayoral landscape. All of those things affected my work with D.C. Public Schools. I had to adapt to be successful. And I was for 2.5 years. And then I decided to make my next move. I moved to the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services because they offered me a position as a COO. I'd finally gotten the title, right? That was part of the dream, the vision. I'm a COO, so I should be successful and I should be happy. It was the worst year of my life. The obstacle that I had to overcome there, and wasn't able to do it, the company culture was toxic. So I had to engage in some self-reflection and self-correction. I had to establish for myself some non-negotiables. I had to realize that it's not all in the title, and it's not just about the money. I have to believe in the mission of the company, and the culture has to be healthy. I have to love what I do, and I have to love where I am doing it. Once I was clear on my amended vision, the right opportunity presented itself for me right here in Durham, North Carolina. So, did you discover the theme or the pattern in my career? It's change. The single greatest attribute of my personality that has allowed me to be successful and overcome obstacles is my ability to adapt to change. Adaptability is defined by Tony Alessandra and Michael O'Connor in their book, The Platinum Rule, in a two-part process. It combines flexibility and versatility. Flexibility is your willingness to adapt. It's your attitude. Versatility is your ability to adapt. It is your aptitude. High flexibility is characterized by 5 attributes: confidence, tolerance, empathy, positiveness, and respect for others. High versatility traits are resilience, vision, attentiveness, competence, and self-correction. I worked hard. I paid attention to details. I learned my craft. I had a vision for my future. I stayed positive. I was confident in my own abilities, and I could back up that confidence with competence. I was willing to take risk, and I was willing to take a step back when necessary to examine my circumstances and make corrections as needed. I got back up and started again when I failed, and I did all of this while remaining tolerant, empathetic, and respectful of others. So that's my story. I hope you can learn something from it, and I really hope that it inspires you to try something new.
Thank you, Regina. Let's have a hand for all 5 of the panelists, please. Phenomenal women, and the stories are phenomenal. I had no idea. You know, you can't really tell from a resume. You can just look at it, and you can look at their bio, but you can't really get the real flavor of it until you hear it. So thank you so much for sharing. The next segment, we will have a few minutes for question and answer. After the question and answer session, and we have remarks from the Larry Thomas Mentorship Group. After that, you will be able to go out and have refreshments, and at that time, you can also talk with the panelists. You will have a chance to interact and ask individual questions if we don't get to them right now, because we're almost out of time, so I want to be aware of that and respect your time. So are there any questions to the panel? Okay.
My name is Herbert Williams. I want you ladies to just take off your professional hats just for a minute. Because what I heard was an awesome story. I didn't hear yours, Anita. I wish I was here. But Kelli, you drew me. And my question to you is, how many times do you run into people or women that have mental health issues? I am the consumer representative for NAMI Durham. That's the reason I'm asking. We as women have a tendency to, when we do have mental health issues, we want to cover our head and tell, oh, ain't nothing wrong with me. You know, and I can still put on that strong face and continue to keep moving and be making a mess all at the same time. And that's the reason that I'm asking this question, because mental illness is very high among women, and we like to cover up. So Kelli, could you please answer?
Sure. I think every day I run into people that have mental illness issues. For women, I think I see it a lot. I know that some women, just through my experiences, when I meet people sometimes try to cover, or a lot of people, sometimes women say that they pray to get rid of the mental illness, and sometimes some women are arrested and put in jail, and that's kind of our society's look at what to do with mental illness. But I do think that mental illness is a problem, not just with women, but with men as well, and it's pretty systemic in our society, and that I think we're not doing enough because there's not the structure there's not the structure that's there anymore. I know my mother, who's a social worker, and she's very passionate about this issue. She says in Massachusetts in the 1960s and 70s, they shut down all the mental health wards, and she says we committed suicide and a holocaust of our own people because we're no longer treating people with mental illness issues. I think when I go out and I meet people, when women or whomever commits a crime, there's a reason for that, and I think that whether you don't have the structure that clearly a lot of people up here have had, obviously with their family, just with a loving, supportive structure, or people just, unfortunately, they're born with that chemical imbalance. And there's nothing that I can do, there's nothing that people can do except be compassionate in that and try to understand that. I know there's so many times where I pull out my reporter pad and I write down names of numbers of people that I know. I was in Chapel Hill and a man came up to me asking for help, and I got on the phone and wrote down every name and number of person that I know, and I said, hey, you can call this person right now, they're sitting at their desk. I think it's a sad issue that is much greater than me, it's much greater than you and our society as a whole, and I wish that we could do something, and that's obviously a larger conversation that our politicians would have to address.
Okay, here again, in the interest of time, if you will, save your questions and talk with the panelists outside during the reception which follows this program. Next, for our closing remarks, I would like to call up our esteemed Director of Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, and that is Constance Stansel. And everybody knows she's the hardest working director in the city. So come on up and close us out. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As Delilah said, my name is Constance Stansel, and I want to thank these esteemed and accomplished women for sharing your inspiring stories with us tonight, your life experiences, your career experiences with us tonight. So I would like for all of you just to stand and give them a round of applause. And while you're standing, give yourself a round of applause. One of the people that I look to every day is Mayor Pro Tem. She is our guiding light here in the city of Durham. The thing that I like about her, no matter where she is, she supports city staff and especially women in the city of Durham. So Mayor Pro Tem, our hats are off to you. Yes. I also want to thank the young people who are in the audience. I hope you've learned a lot tonight from the inspiring stories that the ladies have shared with you tonight. How many young people are here tonight? Could you please stand? And I'm thinking of teenagers. Please stand so we can see you. And I want to thank the adults who brought them here tonight. You know, you are one step ahead of those who are not here tonight because you've had an opportunity to hear that they didn't get there just by someone putting them there. They had to work for it. They did the studying, and they did what they needed to do to get where they are tonight. So you have, you know, good examples, good role models. And next I want to call the young men who served as ushers tonight. We just want them to give their names. We also want to call Mr. Larry Thomas, who is the founder of the Thomas Mentorship Program. These young men come every year to usher for us. They escort the women up front. And we just want him to come up and talk to a little bit about his organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Yes, to our Mayor Pro Tem and all our elected officials, and to all of you, thank you for being here. At the Thomas Mentor Leadership Academy, I am the founder and the CEO. We mentor young men between the ages of 10 and 15 years old who's raised by a single parent or they're being raised by their grandparents. What we provide them with purpose, motivation, and direction, which in turns lead them to choose alternative actions towards instead of at-risk behaviors. So that's what we do at Thomas Mentor Leadership Academy. And I would like for the young men to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, my name is Trey Breeden. I'm 10 years old and I go to Glen Elementary.
Hi, my name is Abdul Sears. I go to School for Creative Studies and I'm 12 years old.
Hi, my name is Frederick Russell. I go to Lucas Middle School and I'm 13 years old.
Hello, my name is Cadet James and I'm 14 years old and I go to Northern Gravel Middle School.
My name is Michael Breeden. I'm 13 years old and I go to New Middle School.
Number 2.
Hi, my name is Abdul Sears. I go to the School for Creative Studies and I'm 12 years old.
All right. All right. This is just a few of our young men. We also have young men in Wake County and in Granville County also. But we thank you, Ms. Donaldson, for inviting us for the 3rd year to hear amazing stories from amazing women. So thank you so much. Thank you again.
Again, we want to thank all of you for coming tonight. That's the end of our program, and we'd love for you to join us outside for food and refreshments and lots of conversations.